looks at the video that I posted of my mods to my little Marshall Origin 20, which is up over here on the top of the shelf there, yeah, generated, I've had a lot of comments and questions on those mods. People asking for a bill of materials and more detailed instructions. So this is, I've done that. I've sort of spent the last couple of days actually writing that up and documenting much more of kind of a step-by-step guide, as well as a bill of materials with part numbers, all that kind of stuff, right? So in this video, in the description, you will find a link to where I've got all that material, including photos, you know, more detailed photos before and after as well of the mod. Help yourself. Happy to give this one up. No charge, right? All good. At the beginning of the clip, I just went through a few Strat tones. So last time I was using my Nag guitar, which is a you know, kind of Les Paul style guitar. Had a few questions come through around, you know, after the mods, how does the thing clean up? How does it sound? Look, with the bright cap on the gain pot, it's not really a clean amp. It's like a JCM 800, right? If you've played with a preamp pot on a JCM 800, you'll know that when you wind it back with that bright cap on the gain pot, it gets a bit harsh and bright. It doesn't really clean up unless you use the low input. This doesn't have a low input, right? It's just high input only. So if you really want to get clean tones as well out of the mod, I suggest you can implement it. Just don't put the bright cap in. You'll find that, you know, you'll just compensate with that with, you know, maybe presence or more treble in the EQ section. So yeah, just have a play with it, right? You can try it with the bright cap in and try it with it out. Me, I just want to get kind of one main tone out of this. So I've done it with the bright cap in, and that's how it's going to stay. Anyway, I hope the instructions are useful, and feel free to message me or email if you've got any questions or comments. I'm happy to help out with the mod. Cheers, guys. What we're looking at here are the full instructions for the mod. So we start off with dealing with the bill of materials, right? So the resistors, electrolytic caps, coupling and bypass caps that you need. So these are set out, so we've got the, this is the corresponding component, component designator on the PCB, right, on the Origin 20 PCB. And next to it is the value that will be going in there, right? So this is setting out the mod values, not the values that are currently in their stock. So in other words, R69 will come out and you'll put a 2.7K resistor in its place, and so on and so forth. These last two here, per the documentation, right, we have to kind of solder them in a little bit, just not straight in. You'll see in the detailed photos and further on in the instructions I deal with that. These are all metal film resistors, good choice. And I've got a link to Mouser part numbers for everything in here, right? So people have been asking me to do kits. It's not really necessary. I'll release this documentation. You guys can order the parts in yourself. These are a good option because they are they have quite thin legs on these resistors, so it makes it easy to get into the holes on the Origin PCB, which they're pretty small, right? So if you get a big, 1 watt carbon film resistor, they'll go in, but it won't be as easy. These are 0.68 microfarad electrolytic caps. Again, part numbers here. These are the Wilmer coupling caps that I use. So you can see the red ones in the photos. This is the 2N2 or 2.2 nanofarad and 22. You need a couple of those, two 22s and one 2N2. These are the 470 picofarad bypass caps. I've given two options here. This is the Wilmer cap, the first one here. You need to be careful with these. Sometimes they come in short-legged format, and you actually need, for these you want longer legs because you need to be able to sit them across a resistor. So I'm pretty sure that's the right part number for the longer leg ones. Can't guarantee it because I haven't actually ordered them myself. So I've given an alternative here as well. This is a mica cap, probably a better choice actually. So if you want to spend just a couple more bucks, get the mica cap here, a better option I think. 4N7, it's a 4N7 cap, just a normal film cap for the fixed depth. It's going to go across R50. This is a Mallory 150 cap used extensively in modern amps. A lot of the Friedmans were using these at one point. And this is a 1 nanofarad ceramic cap, which we wire onto the PCB, but it's effectively a bright cap for the gain pot. And as I've mentioned a couple of times in the video, when we're looking at the tone of the amp, this is optional. You wire this in if you want that kind of bright, gainy JCM 800 kind of, hot rod sound. The bite. If you really want to be able to wind the gain pot down and clean the amp up significantly, you won't want this bright cap. So try with it in and with it out. And, if you game enough, you can put it on a switch. That would be fine, no problem. Right, well, we get through to the instructions here. What I might do now is just actually flick up some photos on the components and talk through some of the changes on the PCB itself. So, hopefully bring these instructions to life to some degree. But the first and foremost, what you need to do is you need to remove the chassis from the head cab, right? You'll do that by screwing the back panel off the amp. Underneath the amp, you'll see there's 4 bolts. They hold the chassis in place. Tilt the amp forward, unscrew those 4 bolts, and then you'll find that the chassis will just slide straight out the back. Pull the tubes out. First thing you're going to do, right, is you want to remove all 5 tubes from the chassis, the 2 power tubes and the 3 preamp tubes. Do pay attention to the order that the preamp tubes are in. Often they are actually in a particular order for V1, V2, V3. It's not essential, but take a photo while you got them in there, so at least you'll know when you put them back, you'll be putting them back in the same order. Put them to the side in a safe place. Once you've done that, you'll be able to flip the chassis over and get into actually modding the amp. First thing you need to do, right, is take lots of pictures of the stock amp. You can sort of set this out in the doco here. Main thing here, of course, is that if you ever want to restore it back to stock, you can do that. The second thing, and this is probably the most important thing, is that all those terminals, the wires that go to and from that PCB, you need to know what order they're in by color code. You just take lots of photos, right? You won't regret it. And do it before you start pulling all this stuff off. You need to remove the PCB from the amp. Right? You're going to do that by, as I've just mentioned, unclipping all of the wires. Just be careful with those kind of spade terminals. Don't yank the wire to try and pull them off the PCB. Chances are you'll pull the wire straight out of the spade terminal, and then you'll have a job putting it back on again. So use some needle nose pliers and grab the terminal from the actual grab it from the actual terminal as far down the bottom as you can, and then just pull gently straight up, and they'll come out with no damage. The PCB comes out. There's 9 larger bolts holding the PCB in place, and you'll see those on the actual on the PCB. But you need to actually, there's 4 small bolts holding the power tubes in place as well. So you need to unscrew those as well. And I can see that in my haste of typing this up, I've written he rather than thee, but I'll fix that up. Once it's out, right, you can start removing the components. So Just be careful with your soldering iron here. I tried both ways. I tried melting the solder from underneath the PCB and then pulling out from the top. Eventually I settled on doing it just from the top, because they are double-sided boards, right? So the solder pad will respond equally to the bottom or the top. The solder they use in these boards is not, it doesn't conduct heat very well. I think it's lead-free solder. It's a real pain to work with, right? So I actually had some of my leads and tin solder on hand, and some of the pads I had to apply some of my own solder to them with my iron to get the to get it to flow, to get the heat to flow through both sides of the board, so that the component that I was trying to remove would come out freely. You don't want to yank them, because if you yank it too hard, the component will break, or you'll do some damage to the PCB itself. So yeah, as I said here, eventually I kind of found it easier on this board, just working from the top, waiting for the applying the iron. You'll see that the leg of the resistor that you're trying to pull out, the resistor will start to kind of look like it's free, and then using your pliers just pull the leg out. Do it one at a time. The caps, particularly the box capacitors, you can only do those from the bottom, obviously, because on top of the board the legs aren't exposed at all. So just remove all of the stuff that's listed here, including all of the components listed in the bill of materials, right? So all of these, 69, 62, all the way through to 50, need to come out, as well as everything that's listed here. And I remember in the first clip, one of the things I said was, in terms of this mod, right, what you'll be doing mostly is pulling stuff out rather than putting stuff in. Once you've got everything out, you can start to put the mods in, right? So you can see the instructions here kind of set out, how to do that, step by step by step. So I think what we'll go to now is a couple of photos of the actual mods in progress and I'll just talk through, I'll talk through those, so hopefully there's some, you can see the connection between what's written here and what's in the photos. Alright. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is just step through the written instructions and just point out a few things on the PCB itself. So the instructions start right with removing all of the components. So you can see like C39, 67 and so on, C33 here, C32. So this is kind of what you'd end up with, right, when these things come out. Obviously some of these footprints you're actually going to fill in with other components, but some of them will just be left blank, right? So don't stress about that. That's to be expected. Wiring in, the first thing you'll do once you pull out everything you need to is you'll start to wire in the new resistor and capacitor values. So you can see these are those thinner 1 watt metal film resistors that I refer to in the instructions. I'm using them here, right? So once you pull the component out, you can solder the new one in. New electrolytic cap here is 0.68 microfarad, and so on and so forth. Just a couple of things to point out here. So once you put all the components in, I then go on to say that you need to run a wire from the bottom of 67 to the top of 65. This is this blue wire here. You could actually look, if I had the PCB out, I'd probably wire this underneath the board just so it's a bit more tidy. But just bear in mind that I was kind of modding this on the fly as I went, and had to change a few things around based on my own discovery. So what this is doing is effectively making sure you're getting from the gain pot directly to the grid or the input of the second triode on V1. So this effectively enables the bypassing of all of this filter network here, which I refer to in the first video as probably a bit unnecessary in my view. So you need to wire that in like that. The next thing you're going to do, this is the this blue ceramic cap here, this is the 1 nanofarad bright cap for the gain pot, which I've spoken about a few times in the clips, right? So you can get to this PCB if you want to and rip it out and wire this straight onto the gain pot. You have to get to the underside of this board that I'm pointing to, or you can do what I did and cheat a bit and realise that the gain pot connections that you need to get to wire a bright cap are actually here on this board, because they come off these wires and come back onto the PCB here. So from the bottom of R67 to the bottom of C42, that cap there links to the bottom of this cap here, the red one. That's your bright cap. So if you don't want that bright cap, don't put it in, or maybe put it in, lift the leg out, lift this leg up, try it with it off, try it with it on. Modder's choice, right? Do whatever you like there. As I said, I've left mine in. Next thing you need to do, right? So this is a 470 picofarad cap. So you would have already soldered in this 100k resistor here. It's R59. Now this is just, it's basically put in, it's in parallel, right? So one leg connects to that side and one leg connects to that side. Pretty simple. So moving on, this is the 470k, 470 picofarad and 470k voltage divider, which is the bringing down the input as it heads into V2B. So a little bit tricky here. You've got to put the 470k, there's one underneath this green cap, you can see it. 470k is going to go across R90, and then you've got the 470 picofarad in parallel with that, right? So on each leg of the resistor this thing connects to in parallel. And then at the top of R90, this is the other 470k resistor, is going to go and come down to the bottom of R56, which is a ground point, right? So you're grounding this side of the resistor of this 470k, the top side, along with this 470k just poking through here, and the green 470 picofarad cap. They're all connecting to the top of R90, right? And then the other side of this resistor goes into the bottom point of R90. Okay, R58, the instructions talk about running a link or a wire across R58. So just like this, right? This is an offcut, one of the resistor legs. You need to link this this guy, right? So take the resistor out, put a wire link in there, and this is our fixed depth circuit, right? So this is on R50. This is the negative feedbacks coming back into the amp. This is a 100k resistor, which is negative feedback resistor, and I've left the top side of it in the pad. The bottom leg, which was here, I've pulled out and put it straight up vertical, right? And in its place, this is a 220k resistor in parallel with a 4N7 film capacitor. It's all in the instructions. You need to get this into the circuit, right? So the way to do that, put that side in there, and then join these guys up, and then that gives you your depth circuit, which just adds some nice thump to the bottom of the tone for you. This is the underside of the board. As you can see, there are the two links that you need to make here. Right? First one, you can see I've done one with shielded coax and one without. Look, shielded coax is probably not necessary, but look, I did one, and just bear with me here, right? First thing you're doing here is you're linking the top of I think it's the top of C33 to the left hand side of C30, and when I say left hand side I mean if viewed from the top of the board. We're looking at the bottom of the board here, obviously. This allows you to set up V2 as a classic third gain stage and cathode follower, right? So this just basically feeds a signal out of one side of the tube and back into the other. This here is actually connecting from this pin, just there's 4 pins in a row here. It's on a header, the very left hand side as I'm looking at it, and it goes into this point here. Now the way that these headers are set up is this is a signal line, that's a ground, that's a signal line, that's a ground. So I've shielded this audio run here by, this is the hot signal and this is the ground, and I've connected the shield of this coax to that ground pin on the underside of the board. On this side, the shield is actually not connected to anything. You just, whenever you run coax inside an amp, you only ground it at one end. Okay, the other end you just put a heat shrink off and make sure there's no wires protruding, and then the core of the coax is going into this point here, which is the bottom of C50, which now has a new 22 nanofarad Wilmer coupling cap in it. You would have already soldered that in. Okay, and last but not least, this is coming out in and out of the tone stack, into the in and out of the treble middle bass, and in the stock amp, at the other end of these wires here is another plastic header like this, or a plastic socket or jack, whatever it is. You need to clip the ends off it so that you can actually use these wires, and they go to these 2 places here. So it's probably better illustrated in this picture. You can see here we are, we're coming off the board here. Again, the white is the signal line and the black is a ground shield. Just as like I said, you only need to actually shield these at one end. So this is shielded here, it's connected to ground, that's connected to ground. This one here is coming into the top of R59, so you need to, you'll trim a bit of the shield off this wire here and get that soldered into the top of R59, and you can just leave, this is the ground wire, you can just leave it, just clip it off the side there, it doesn't matter. Similarly here, I've clipped the plastic jack off this thing. This black wire, which is ground, is just sitting there. It's not going to do any harm. You probably put a bit of heat shrink on there and I had to extend this because this is not long enough. It needs to get to the bottom of R51. Right, this gets it to the input of the master volume. Right, so by getting it to this point, you're getting this back into the master volume of the amp, which then finally goes into the phase inverter input, which is down here. So you can see I've just extended this and put a bit of heat shrink on there. And then you end up with, this is the final, all the mods done, right? And the PCB back in the amp. And so all of these photos and a whole bunch of others, I'll stick into a directory inside these mod instructions. So you hopefully find those as a useful reference. Just one thing to point out here, you see this this cable here, or 2 cables are just hanging loose. This is the effects loop, right? So you can see this actually runs across over here, and these connects to these 2 jacks, send and return for the effects loop. And if you've studied this mod, in the previous video, I had a look at the schematic and also what I've described, you'll know that this mod disables the effects loop, because this 12AX7 here previously is the tube buffered effects loop. So this cable here normally connects to this little header here to get the effects loop in and out. Right, so just don't plug it in. Leave it out. You can clip that off there and pull this out here and remove the cable out of the amp. That'd be fine. I actually intend to put a solid state effects loop in here using one of my Headfirst PCBs. I'll probably mount it off a couple of standoffs that'll drill through this PCB to mount. But that's a job for another day. Anyway guys, yeah, get into it and good luck.